Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. If you're joining from the West Coast or Eastern or Europe, we have a very special and dear guest today, Candice Thompson, psychotherapist and TEDx speaker, who recently talked in front of a big crowd asking why AI is not your therapist, or telling people why AI is not your therapist. But here it's going to be more of a question, and it is live, so people can ask questions during. We will try to answer to the best of our ability. And we also have Mark Ritter, AW's co-founder, to answer some of your questions. Um, Candice, we have a world of AI, a world of digital, more and more digital interactions. We know, for instance, that Gen AI number one use case now has been used as a companion or as a therapist or both. What do you think of that? And can we bring clarity to the subject? Clarity is one of our 11 C's in terms of what we can bring for wellness to people. Please bring a bit of clarity of your insights on what Gen AI is doing and how we can think about it in a different way.
Yeah, so with health tech in general, some of my cautions have been the speed at which everything is taking place. About 5, 6 years ago, this would not have even been a conversation. Therapy and mental health care is typically very low tech. And so it seems very startling to quickly be in this world where AI is being used for causal therapy or emotional support when it has the AI hasn't really been tested. It's outpacing regulations and research. And so now we're in this era where there's lawsuits and claims of, kids being led into pornographic information or being encouraged to um, do self harm or just being misguided in information, which I would say that's not surprising to someone like me. And I think most people would have these cautions who know about health tech. However, I think sometimes in technology, and I'm based in the Silicon Valley, so that's why I kind of specialize in this niche. Beta comes fast, and in the tech world you expect there to be bugs, and it's not this surprising thing. But in healthcare, when we're talking about people's emotions, companionship, talking about depression, or thoughts of suicide, we don't beta test on people. We take that really seriously. And so there's this colliding of worlds right now with the speed of technology and the type of intimate information that humans are now engaging with that rough drafted tech. And so, yes, there's all this friction that's
Well,
taking.
is it perhaps the fact that we're beta testing on people without telling them, and is it in AI and maybe with social media as well, where we're giving kids and other people social media, and well, we'll figure it out the effects in 10 years. Same thing with AI; it's moving very fast. And are we trying to put the right safeguards, and what safeguards should they be? What can AI do, and what can AI not do? Those are some of the questions we'll try to answer today. Mark, any thoughts on the subject?
I think people, I think you pointed to this, just feeling super overwhelmed, especially in the digital age with notifications and all the information that's coming at them. And it's easy for me to understand why people would turn to AI as a pseudo therapist, right? We'll get into that later, but the accessibility is very cost effective, right? Form of therapy that does appear on the surface as a viable alternative, right? A digital life coach says all the right things that you would want to hear, but this sort of has a sycophantic tendency to agree with everything that you have to say, and this can have some disastrous consequences, I think, therapeutic outcomes as well. So I'm really excited to have this conversation, especially considering that you have this breadth of experience, as a psychotherapist, right? Treating people with trauma and seeing, this shift over the last couple of years. This is all very new territory for us. So just to hear this from somebody who has experienced this firsthand, right? You are in Silicon Valley as well, like the heart of the AI age, right? So for you offer extremely unique perspective, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And you mentioned the psychophantic fantasy. So we had another podcast with some newest research. We went through the research of AI causing psychosis, and you guys can check that out if you want. More importantly, there's extra risk. So if you play devil's advocate, you can say there is information out there. There is bad information, anyways. We are already in the information overload. People have been receiving bad information that might affect their health or their well-being for ages. So it's not just that there's bad information. So there's an extra risk with AI is that it will confirm that bad information and you will think it's better information, right? That can also happen with social media feeds and other technology that are just trying to cater to your need and make you think that you're right because everyone wants to feel right. But we actually, I'll always say, Mark and myself, that a good psychotherapist or coach or clinician should challenge people and not just agree with them, right? Any thoughts on that, Candice?
Well, what you just said about how social media or AI can replicate this, age of information, what's wild to me is it doesn't have to, right? So all of these constructs have been built by companies and they make choices. They make choices what safeguards they're going to use or what fact checking or what information they allow to be leaked out. And so that's what's startling is it's not like they have no control. And what's been shocking to me, I think OpenAI, the founders of ChatGPT or a parent company, is starting to put safeguards in. But this is very new as of lawsuits. Weeks ago, you would say things like, I want to harm myself. And I've tested it as a therapist. I'm always curious what's going to happen if I say X, Y, and Z. I'm going to use the buzzwords that I know would alarm me to assess someone for their safety. And up until recently, it would engage in those conversations. And now, of course, they can redirect and say, go to a therapist. Here's, the hotline to 988 and being able to really protect people. They had that ability all along, but they chose not to. And so that's something that I wish as consumers in general, we had empowerment to be critical thinkers around these products. And what do the products have to gain by not putting these safeguards in place? Because they often know before we do what the risks are and they allow it anyways. And they're already tallying up the costs that it might have on humans and making the choice that it's more beneficial to them to move forward anyways.
The human cost or the lawsuit cost is just a drop in the bucket of how much money the valuation of OpenAI. Everyone can check it out. And isn't this actually what we're doing at AWE, Mark, in terms of doing it different and for a different purpose than just money? And Candice, we are building at AWE Digital Wellness some AI products, and we have a clinical team and we have patient and human-centric first ideas. Yet we're always ready to be challenged and innovate. And if you think that we're doing something wrong or we could do better, we're having this conversation, and we can have conversation offline to make sure that everything that we know as therapists, as humans that want to help humans, not humans that want to use AI to make more money, we can have those open conversations, not the open AI, right? Mark, what do you say about this topic?
I think the challenge is trying to solve a digital problem with a digital solution, right? Where a lot of what we're talking about here, the consequences of remote work, for example, are that people leading much more isolated lives than ever. I just spoke to somebody who spends 10 hours a day just in front of his computer working, and he's feeling the social consequences, right? The impact that it has on his belief systems because of the way that he's interfacing with technology. And a lot of these companies come out saying, hey, you're feeling lonely, let's give you some sort of digital soliloquy that's going to make you feel a little less lonely. And I would say that we have to be careful because especially AWE, we are a digital company, but we are developing an AI solution that like a lot of other companies, is attempting to solve a very real human problem, right? So we have to be careful. I would be curious to hear from Candice, the boundaries that you see, technology or AI, and uh, the boundaries that it reaches in trying to supplant that need for perhaps human attention, affection, or a personal psychotherapeutic experience. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, technology as a tool can be fantastic. It's allowing us to have this conversation right now. And so if technology is leading me to text my friend and get directions somewhere, and maybe can even, if AI, you can use it as a tool to boost, conversation starters and to give you confidence. But that's a tool. It's not the relationship. And so exactly what you're saying, so much of our lives right now, and COVID really expedited this, have us being online more and more than ever before. But as human beings, we're sensory, and we have five senses for a reason. And so I have tactile needs, and I have needs to smell, and I have needs for relationships and connections. And when we're in an office, we get those needs met so easily. We go into the break room and get coffee. We have a quick chat with a coworker. There's noise in the background. We're, touching our desk. There's so many other things happening. And when we reduce our lives to me and a screen, then I think that we're missing how much we're giving up for convenience. And yes, sometimes, it's not all or nothing. I think that's an important piece of what you're talking about. What are the boundaries? What's the balance? It's great. It's allowing us, technology, to connect from all, we're in 3 different time zones. That's fantastic. And yet, making sure that we're balancing our lives, and that after this, like, I think that, Mark, you're in a cafe, like, that's fantastic. You're around other people, and really making sure that tools are connecting us to our humanity.
So, by the way, I'm in the university today, so this is
Great.
homecoming, but it's not my homecoming. I'm going to present some of the recent findings from our digital reset and the framework to kind of actually, the digital reset is a human experience, right? So it's me or Mark live talking to people asynchronously, but a real voice on time, like we're doing now. And visual is even better. You talked about human needs, right? So you can now talk to the AI. Many people are talking nonstop to the AI or typing with them, but there's not this, even if it's through screen, there's eye to eye contact, there's nodding, there's nonverbal, there's smiling, there's laughing, right? And that cannot be replaced.
Well, and so regardless, I mean, here we're all human beings. So I cannot predict what any of you are going to say. And so we get this organic connection that's going to take place. We have to remember that AI is never going to be real. So it uses our language. It might say things like, oh, I feel what you're feeling. I understand. But I really want more just images. If I had tons of my great billboards that just showed these like farms to see, like, they're just the wires and all of the digital connections that are producing that language, but there's no human there. And that's what's getting distorted, is it feels like, oh, I feel understood, because I'm used to, if I talk to a human and they say that word, it's coming from a place of compassion, of empathy, of experience. And so we're actually having a connected moment. And with AI, that's not taking place. I feel connected, but the computer is, doing its coding, and it has no emotional attachment to the conversation.
So I thought about this topic a lot. Actually, in my first book, I researched a lot the difference between compassion and empathy in terms of psychology and neural activity differences. So there's different regions in the brain that activate during compassion and empathy, and there is different types of empathy: emotional empathy, intellectual empathy. And compassion is actually, the definition of compassion is an intention to decrease people's suffering, right? So it's coming from an intention, which AI cannot have an intention, right? So what AI does, it really replicates the language of empathy, right? So it's more like, soothing and sympathy as well, right? So it's sympathetic, and it's also telling you that you're going to be okay, but it's not a real emotion, and that can be dangerous because, you know the degree of empathy is only based on the response, not on a real desire to help the person, right?
Mhm.
So that's a big difference.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think these companies also feel a huge degree of responsibility. I think last time I checked, 400 million people use OpenAI a week, right? And there's a huge amount of data that goes into these companies. And if somebody, let's say with suicidal tendencies, is communicating with one of the AI chatbots, does OpenAI face a responsibility to take this personal private data and to deliver it to the responsible authority to take care of this person in need, or do they keep it private, right? So I think we are again sort of beta testing in this digital age with
Mhm.
the guardrails for providing
Mhm.
therapy via AI en masse. What do you have to? Do you have any thoughts on that, Candice?
Well, it's wild, in this conversation, I was just thinking about how did we get here? And there's so many things at play that allow this to go unregulated, right? To have Meta as big as it is, to have so many tech billionaires, um, to be lobbying and allowing for there not to be any restrictions is a big component of what led us here today. Also, all of these years of, social media being on the rise and smartphones. And so it seems wild to me that humans would be this dependent on machines for our like basic needs. Connection, attachment is really what makes us humans and gives us purpose for life. And I'm sure if, I was an alien dropped on this earth right now, it might seem really crazy. And so to think about all the layers that have led us to this place where it doesn't seem that crazy because we were working from home anyways, or I was connecting with my Aunt Sue online who lives in Texas anyways. And so the step to it not being a person doesn't seem as extreme as it did if our minds were calibrated to what they were 6 years ago. And I think we need to remember what has changed and evolved.
So, thanks, Candice. And yes, there is never going to be a replacement for that real interaction. And we can give perhaps a goal to an AI. Um, we can ascribe it a purpose, but it cannot have the same purpose and meaning that we do, right? So, Vervaeke, professor of U of Toronto, talks a lot about the crisis of meaning. I actually wrote a blog recently. I don't know if it's out or yet. The marketing team is on it, talking about purpose in AI. So, uh, the first, as we've talked about, use case in 2025, use of Gen AI is companionship and therapy. And now the third, which was not on the top 10 list last year, is purpose, right? So people are looking for purpose with AI. They're asking, what should I do with my life? Is there meaning? What's my purpose? What's my goal, right? And do we really think that AI can do that? And to what degree, right? So actually we are very aware of that. So we are building those safeguards and that knowledge in our AI. So we've just released a AI very early version called Lumi that's available on the web on WhatsApp. But it comes from the scientific understanding of all those questions, right? So we presented at the San Diego Society for Neuroscience. We presented at Canadian Psychological Association with clinicians. We presented it to psychologists that could be critical about it and said, that's very interesting. You thought about it. You've asked the right question, right? So we have 96% rating of safety in terms of giving back to a human being, and not like OpenAI or others. We're not giving you a hotline. We're giving you people in the system already. So we're building a safe community where you can have access to someone, right? Because if you tell someone call a hotline, are they going to call? And who is that? And is there a waiting list, right? So we're trying to put all those safety and also understanding of what people are using AI, looking at the literature, talking to clinicians, psychiatrists, and trying to make, you know, knowing that people are going to use AI and knowing that it's a powerful tool, let's make it the best possible and think about human first. And yeah, of course, we need to eventually pay the engineers and it needs to be monetized, but that's never going to be the number one goal of what we're doing. I just wanted to pause here because we're live. If anyone has any questions for Candice, Mark, or myself, Q&A time for a little break. So we are live on LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, and other platforms that I'm not even aware. So if you're watching, oh, here we go. Therapy being mostly expensive explains why people turn to AI. Will your company's package be covered by health insurance? Mark, would you want to answer that?
Or the company being AWE, which company in particular is Shindu referring to?
Candice also has a company, but
Well, let me jump in real quickly
yeah, go
about,
ahead.
just this. And I think this is where the accessibility around AI comes in, is because therapy is really expensive. And to me, it's not a hard solve of like what would make therapy accessible to people and pay the providers, right? Because we don't want therapists to become an underfunded industry either. If health insurance were reimbursing therapists close to a market rate where therapists could live a regular life, the type of lifestyle you would expect maybe your dentist or nurse practitioner to have, then you get access to therapy through your insurance, and a therapist can take insurance because the reimbursement rate is adequate. And what's happening right now, and part of what is allowing AI to be more accessible than a therapist, is that insurance companies reimburse therapists about 1/3, at best half of a market rate. And so therapists don't accept insurance because they can't live off of that reimbursement.
Do you know why that is? Why is it that insurance companies aren't reimbursing therapists at the full market rate?
I mean, my quick assumption would be to save money on their part. Therapy didn't used to be covered by health insurance. I mean, that's relatively new, and a lot of these EAP programs covering therapy are relatively new as well. Therapy used to be a private model. The benefits to that is that therapists, it's a weird industry. It's not the same as when you go to your doctor and it's clear, like you need this antibiotic, you need a cast for your bone. In therapy, we do these interventions where I'm listening to your body language. I'm kind of feeling the vibes. I'm asking you deep questions, and this process has been shown to work and to provide relief, but there's no map. There's no, in 8 sessions, you will have 50% reduction of therapy. It's not like that because it's relationship. And there's a mystery and art to therapy that doesn't fit the medical model the way that other physicians and medical care does. And so I think it's clunky in that way. And why you see the rise of something like CBT is like insurance wants to make that 8-step model where you can fit this criteria in therapy and we can guarantee this outcome. Therapy's never going to be like that. And so a lot of this, I think health tech and insurance is trying to make therapy what it's not, to fit into their needs, rather than letting the experts lead and to, yes, sure, support us through reimbursement, support us through creating tools that can make our work more efficient. But I think they're trying to corral therapists into this box that's just never existed before for us. And it doesn't work for the work that we do for our interventions.
So there's two things that come to mind regarding it. It seems like if insurance companies were to reimburse 100%, there would be just such a huge demand for therapy in the first place that the insurance companies perhaps are worried that they would lose so much money because there would be so much need right now for psychotherapy and the reimbursement for that. I do want to share one. So I live in Germany, right? But I'm also from the U.S., so I've experienced both sides of the healthcare system. In Germany, psychotherapists are almost always covered completely by health insurance, right? But this has created actually a new problem in Germany that it's very difficult to get a psychotherapist appointment, right? Most of them are just booked out months in advance. And a lot of times people need an appointment right now. So it actually decreased in Germany. The accessibility to therapy has decreased because health insurance companies, like everybody wants to go to the therapist where they're not going to have to pay out of pocket, or the health insurance company is going to pay, right? But these clinics have such a long waiting list, which is good for the clinics, but it's not good for the clients, right? So
But what a good problem to have. I mean, what you're describing is more people are getting therapy.
yes,
And so therapists as an industry are right. Therapist practices are full. So as an industry, we're thriving. My guess is there. More people are getting coverage. And so then the problem is, how do you make more therapists? That's a great problem to have, rather than right now is you have therapists with empty practices or getting paid under their worth and people
yes.
needing therapy. Nobody's winning right now. And then tech is like, I've got a solution. Come online. It's like nobody's winning but the tech billionaire companies. Sorry,
Well,
I'm getting on my soapbox. This is my passion project.
No, of course, I understand. I think what I'm saying in that scenario in Germany is that it's good for the therapist, but I think a lot of people are still turning to AI because they can't get a therapy session at a clinic because they can't find a therapist.
Sure. But my guess is
Right.
that because therapists are taking insurance, compared to the United States, you would have more people getting care. Right now, you have private pay therapists that have empty offices because they can't find private pay, clients, and those clients can't find therapists that take insurance. So, it's like we have both people with empty hands right now. We're in that model.
Yeah.
At least you have the therapist. If they're full, that means if every therapist I know right now is full, that means so many more people are getting care. And yes, people might turn to AI anyways, but then we're looking at a different problem where we're saying, okay, how do we get more people in this industry? How do we make sure that, associates and interns are able to see therapists or training paraprofessionals? And, there's a whole other conversation that we can have.
So I would just say, Candice, that Mark and I are seeing different problems. I live in Canada, so once you're done with Silicon Valley mindset and your trips and keynote in Hawaii, come visit in Canada. We also have the same problem as Germany. Our therapists are being paid 80 to 100% by insurance, sometimes by the government, and there might be some caps, so you can get 100% up until 1,500 per year or 3,000 depending on the plan. But yes, we have the same problem as Germany, and it is also a problem that we have to address. And we spoke to some psychiatrists in the U.S. There's some places that psychiatrists are overbooked and
Absolutely
waiting lists. But here in Canada, if you want, depending on the type of psychotherapist or clinician, you might minimum wait months, and sometimes close to a year, depending on specialty that you need. So that's kind of also a problem, and that's when tech can perhaps enable that overflow of, yes, maybe we should train more real human therapists, and anyone here that wants to be a therapist, do it. We support it. We need more of people, real human caring. But in the meantime, AI is exponentially making more AI therapists than we're making babies, and it takes 20 years before they become therapists, right? So and we can have schools and all that stuff. So it's kind of to say that is a real problem, especially in the U.S. And I hope that you guys can fix it. If not, we can come from Germany and Canada and help you guys out.
I want to catch up to your problem, and then we can all, because here the issue is a lot of therapists aren't full, and I think that's the misrepresentation and marketing that I see a lot is like, oh, well, there aren't enough therapists. Again, I can only speak for the United States. And there's a lot of therapists that I know that, I have an associate who has a full caseload waiting for patients, and I'm a well sought after therapist, so that messaging isn't true. There's plenty of therapists here right now in the United States who have room in their caseloads, probably not at Kaiser, probably not within, the insurance system, but private pay, or even sliding scale, certainly, but it's getting the funding for that. And so, yes, that's where AI, it seems to be stepping in. Audits step in. I mean, I think that's the question here is, there's rules around AI not being able to provide medical care. I think healthcare is also psychotherapy.
Of course. And when we talk about therapists and clinicians and coaches, there's also this level of quality, right? So we see companies like BetterHelp having very bad reviews because they're churning out their employees, and the quality of therapy and the therapeutic alliance is not there. And like we might be sought out therapists and we're on podcasts and people know us, but there's a bunch of other levels of therapists. And can you speak a bit about that, Candice?
Sure. I mean, the big telehealth giants right now, I think, are part of the problem. And it's hard here because I'm sure there's real, like, well-meaning people that want to give access to therapy and to solve some of these problems. And maybe that's how something like BetterHelp started. But BetterHelp reimburses therapists around $40 an hour, which is abysmal. Abysmal. You're talking about at least master's degree licensed clinicians. You wouldn't pay that to your dentist or a nurse practitioner. I mean, there's no healthcare that is unacceptable for 1 hour. And this is also a contracted position, which means that you're taxed 30% in the United States for that. And you're paying for all of your own, business needs. So they take all that money. This is like a minimum wage. So that BetterHelp model just doesn't make any sense to me. You're only going to attract therapists who are brand new in the field, who don't know that that's not a good livable wage, or you're going to get therapists that can't get jobs anywhere else. And so they're going to turn to BetterHelp. I've seen better models for this larger telehealth. And my guess is, this is just a guess, I don't know how this stuff works, but if you can have VC backing plus insurance, plus either like a company that's paying into this EAP for you, or maybe then the client is paying a small percentage, 25, maybe $50 a session, then you can have a robust funding stream that can reimburse therapists well, and maybe can give some investors some money back and provide more available access for the average consumer. I think there's ways to do it, but we have to be more creative and we have to think about everyone involved, the client and what's best for their actual receiving good quality mental health care, the clinician, that we don't become a non-industry because no one can get jobs, or, we're paid less than the people who collect our trash. I mean, and those are great jobs to have, but we didn't go to school to make no money. And that's what's changing in the industry as well. And you're seeing all these life coaches rising up in the ranks that are like, I'll charge, $300. It's not getting reimbursed by therapy. And they're an unregulated, uncertified industry. And so something is really amiss here in the way that we're talking about therapy and mental health care.
Thanks for your insight, Candice. Anything to add, Mark?
Yeah, a lot of things. I mean, it seems like in the US specifically, I always had this paradox in my mind, which is like the people who need therapy the most likely can't afford it. And the people who can afford it, right? It's a very small segment of the of the entire population. And the therapists are kind of fighting over the people who have the ability to pay, right? It leaves a huge subsection of the population, right, perhaps from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, who can't afford it, right? What is the profit incentive for companies to try to offer something for this section of the population, right? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that perhaps the employer could compensate or reimburse some of the cost of the therapy, perhaps insurance companies, right? But it seems like, especially in the US, things only get done if there is a profit incentive behind it. That's kind of one of the reasons I don't think there's been a...
Well, let me speak to that real quickly, because you also have to consider the nonprofit world. So most therapists, one of the reasons that we don't expect to make a lot of money, and how this whole system is like gotten into place in the first place, is that we often go from grad school to agency work. So we work for nonprofits, and those are places that usually get either, government funding or raise money to provide care for exactly the populations that you're talking about. So when I got in the industry, I worked with previously houseless women, women who've been in domestic violence shelters, I've worked in inpatient substance abuse clinics. So there are services and lots of providers that work in and with those populations. And it's usually who we work with first while we're getting our hours. And that's kind of the trade-off is for, clinicians that maybe you don't make a lot of money, but you're getting these hours toward your licensure.
Well, I'm just going to do 3 workshops for NGOs or non-for-profit in Montreal, youth organizations and family organizations. They're associated with schools, and we're doing a workshop about digital wellness and about problematic smartphone use and technology. And we love to partner with NGOs because I think, of course, even NGOs or non-for-profit um, are getting money from funding or from donation or from fundraising. So nothing is coming out of thin air. They might have smaller budget, but maybe because they do, they're more intentional about what they do and making sure that it goes to the right population in need. Right? Mark was talking about who really needs this and how can we provide a wider web that encompass getting the therapist paid for their work, accessing the population that has less financial, right? So I think a tiered model is something
Absolutely.
that, right? And that's also what we're trying to do. We're community first at AWE. We're offering free resources. Our AI will have a free tier that people can, and it's not a therapist. It is just an AI to coach and guide you with a few things, and we'll always tell you to go back to a human if you need to, and we'll encourage you to go play with your friends and make real friends and not stay with the AI because the AI is supposed to make money for the company. That's not our purpose. And we just a model of a therapy as well. We've heard of many therapists that they have their 12 or 15 clients and then they milk them, right? So it's like, you're going to be my client for life. You're easy. I know you. And that's it.
Yeah,
And
I don't know that I think that that's true because I'm not going to say that there aren't bad actors out there. In every industry, there are bad actors. Absolutely. That's a part of humanity. But therapy, why it's so unique than other fields, is because we have all of these ethical obligations that are very unique to therapy. And so something like not milking I mean, that is illegal. So that's, that person is just really a bad actor. If I have a therapist, like a client that comes in, I want to graduate them. The reality, though, is when people come in and maybe they're coming in because they're having work stress. And so that might seem like, a high functioning client. Well, then as they're getting comfortable with you, they reveal to you that they were molested. And so now you're going and doing trauma care. And that's affecting their sex life with their partner. Okay, now you're doing relational health. So the reason that people end up in therapy for a long time is not because I want to milk my client, to pay for my lifestyle. It's because if I'm doing my job right, I'm actually helping them heal the core of their being, right? This is transformative work. And so I want to help someone uncover that onion. And yes, there's some people that come in and they need something that's, more streamlined and they're in and out in a couple of months. But yeah, I think a lot of people have pain that they just don't talk about. And that's why you see someone who might be in therapy for years and years. I wouldn't dismiss the therapist as a bad actor. I would wonder, I wonder what secrets that person has, what trauma or what addictions that I don't know about that they're really trying to overcome.
I
there's,
um I,
go ahead.
can I just chime in for a second? I think part of being on this podcast makes such interesting conversations is not only when we agree but also like disagreements. I'm just going to play devil's advocate just
Please.
for a moment here. I agree with what you're saying, but I would also say that there are bad actors out there in therapy, or perhaps intentionally or unintentionally. Um, but it seems like a lot of the problems that we've been talking about that exist in the realm of therapy in the United States right now creates a profit incentivization model where therapists want to hold on to clients for as long as possible, which perhaps influences the way they administer psychotherapy, i.e., let's try to focus on the problems, right? Not to milk them, but just to keep them on board for as long as possible. I think Abigail Shriver actually talks about this in her book, Bad Therapy, that in the US, lots of people, lots of psychotherapists, they want to sustain the client relationship so that they can continue holding on to these clients, which is their source of income, right? Because there is
I'm
such scarcity.
really curious though if that is. I would be very curious how true that is, because as someone who has this, a private practice, does it feel uncomfortable a little bit when someone graduates and I know that's going to take a chunk, of course, financially, but does that come into my work? No, because I'm well trained. And so that part of my brain and thinking about my needs is not, that's not therapeutic. So I think, if I'm a venture capitalist, if I'm in business, if I'm in finance, I've been trained to think about things monetarily. We are trained highly as therapists, right? You have grad school, and then in my state, 3,000 hours before you sit for these two rigorous board exams that have a 40% pass rate. And so that is drilled in me that that's unethical. And so I would never, and I don't think I'm unique in this. I'm also an adjunct teacher at, a graduate school. I teach this to my students who are becoming therapists. I'm also a supervisor. So it's not industry standards that people are milking. I don't think that if you, sat down with the bulk of today's therapists, that they would say that they would do that unconsciously or consciously, just like any other business. It's like saying, can't trust a mechanic because they're going to break your car because they need the money. It's like, no, there are good mechanics out there that want to do a thorough job. And that's
Yep.
that trust that has you coming back the next time,
Mhm.
not them breaking something else or finding, trying to look for problems to keep you there.
So
So,
I agree, and I just wanted to chime in terms of um, I think that the issue is not that there's not good therapists or that the majority are not. I think what Mark's saying is it's also the system, and it's great. And thanks for sharing that and we believe the same thing. I think that when your client graduates, or like, let him fly, and then if ever they need to come back, you still have the safety net. But the more and more the aim is, and it's not about quick graduation or quick worker. It's, and you mentioned this before, right? It's not a cookie cutter 8 sessions of CBT or a 12 session of this. It doesn't work like that. And you talked about comorbidity and revealing, and then their life changes, their relationship changes. You talked about sexual desire or dysfunction in the couple, or many things, hormonal, seasonal. So things can change, right? So I'm not saying that if you're having your client for 3 years, it's bad. I'm saying that there is some situation that happens, and then the system by itself is also designed that it could be, especially if you're financially struggling yourself as a therapist, or there's some reasons that could be exacerbated, right?
And I would say that would be something that therapists get trained on and is a part of supervision and a part of, that. So that's not something that as an industry we would overlook. As an industry, we have to go through our own therapy and have to have our own self-awareness so that our unconscious desires, me, Candice, as a person, aren't leaking into the treatment. Therapists are, I mean, the brain of a therapist, we think about everything: the time we start the therapy, the time we stop, if I'm going to hand you a tissue or not, did you cross your legs because you felt uncomfortable? There's so much in therapy. Am I going to answer that text message because you're dependent on me? Is this appropriate? Is this not appropriate? I saw you in the grocery store. Should I say hi? You invited me to your wedding. Should I go to the wedding? There's so many unique ethics that tech doesn't usually understand, that therapists are talking through in supervision throughout our entire career journey, so that we're making very conscious and meaningful decisions. Do I go to that Bible study because a client came? I mean, there's so many things that you have to consider living in the world as a human. And now my whole career is like an FBI agent, is completely silent. And I can't acknowledge the relationships I have with my clients in a community. So just to shed light that the
No,
intentional thinking
thank you
that
for
we
that.
have
And
is so unique.
there is a reason why you're on this podcast. We only bring the best And now I know the next time I need a therapist, I got your phone number, Candice.
And I hope, I know you're all playing devil's advocate. I love these conversations because the hope too is that I'm speaking to therapists as well that are listening to this conversation. And yeah, if you are milking someone, like go to your ethics board, really think about it. Go to a friend and talk about, a clinical friend, and talk about the harm that it causes if you're thinking about delaying a client because of finances. Therapists
Right.
should have a multi-tiered model. I think most therapists want to. If I have a sustainable rate, then I can provide some of my clients a sliding scale. And I can do pro bono therapy, which is a part of our ethic as well. And so, right, if I'm able to pay my bills, then I'm also able to contribute back to the industry in ways that make it more accessible to other people.
Well, that makes me happy, and I think that that's because you have compassion, right? Which AI cannot have, right?
Yeah. Can I chime in for a second? I do have a follow-up question based on what you're saying, and again, I agree that we need to take into consideration these therapeutic ethical guidelines that are instilled in you after these 3,000 hours of uh, you know rigor, what it takes to get licensure in the U.S. Right? We do need these guardrails. We mentioned before we are building an AI model at AWE. Lumi is deployed since yesterday, still in its early phase, but it's we want it to be um, rigorous and backed. How do we take these therapeutic ethical guidelines that you mentioned before, this multi-tiered model, and instill this in these AI models, right? So that it's not just a therapist milking, right, sycophantic tendency, agreeing with everything, because it's hard to distinguish, right, between a therapist who just agree with everything that you would say, wouldn't challenge you, and an AI model who would do the same. How do we instill what you are saying into these AI models, right?
I mean, to answer that question, I have to agree that AI should be providing therapy, and I just don't, so that's my platform. However, I think that, if you're providing some type of AI care, then knowing where the line is, where's the line between being emotionally supportive and providing psychotherapy? And I think there's a lot of emotional support that, research is also showing is helpful for people to talk to a chatbot when they're having a hard time. I mean, certainly I've gone to whatever Reddit if I have a symptom and I just want that normalization, like, oh, other people have had it too. I'm not crazy. Phew. AI can provide some of those, touch points for humans that make us feel supported. But should they then analyze and provide psychotherapy? And where is it a cross between that peer to peer, so to speak, support into healthcare? And so that would be my caution for industries, is that they're providing tools that don't cross that boundary line, so that they're not having to even ask those ethical questions about, is this good psychotherapy? Because they're able to assess, oh, hey, it sounds like you need more than just this support. It sounds like you need a therapist. Here's a listserv of therapists that we have vetted, or having those partnerships with providers who people can work with. Maybe that's another part of your business coming, is having therapists work underneath your company, and so then people have an easy off ramp from AI
Right.
companionship into that therapist.
So I'm really glad that you answered that, because that's exactly what we're doing.
That's
Everything.
great.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that the AI, oh, well, before we get to the question, I think I'll ask another quick question, that the AI should be able to recognize the point at which that you transition a client from emotional support chatbot to actual psychotherapy,
Mhm.
the ability to delineate. Okay,
That's
let's jump into this question that we have here. I have a friend who at some point trusted ChatGPT for understanding the source of her guilt for moving here. She's 32, and she said that thanks to it, she could release guilt and accept that. How would you respond to this? Well, it is not her responsibility. Now she's much happier without going to therapy. What do you think about this experience, and what could you recommend to my friend? Candice, seems like a question in your realm, field of
Yeah,
expertise.
I
How would
can't
you?
pretend that the AI isn't helpful and isn't working for people. Clearly, that's why people in droves are using AI in this way. In my experience with ChatGPT, is it basically is providing what we call like a person-centered approach, where they're agreeing and validating to you, and that is leading people to their own self-realizations. And so that sounds like maybe what the friend got from that experience is AI saying, oh yeah, this is so hard, this is right, how did you feel, and got you to your own revelation. And that's happening. And so is that my desire for humanity? It's not. It's people getting relief from it, they are. And so, I think that's where we're having to wrestle with. That's a tool that your friend used, and now they're feeling free. I hope it was the right thing, and I hope it's not causing additional problems or, um, part of my skepticism is, obviously I don't know this friend. If your friend is a narcissist or has any other type 2 personality disorder, they might feel great and guilt free because the AI just agreed with them so much that they feel right. And maybe they shouldn't feel right. Maybe they should sit with that guilt. Maybe they should take personal responsibility. I don't know. And so that is the risk here, is that people are feeling better, but is it actually clinically better? Are they, just getting affirmations on things that are unhealthy?
Just to put this in context, right? So we have this recurring theme of convenience and cost, right? Lower cost, easy convenience, easy access, and then risk, right? So what's the risk? And are people that are not psychologists or neuroscientists like us or therapists, are they aware of those risks when they're blabbing and saying, "Oh, this feels good," right? And I would say like my motto as a writer, as a coach, as someone who talks about happiness, you or my friends, might say like, "I don't like you, Chris," today because I'm going to challenge you, right?
Mhm.
Mark works with me. How much do I challenge you, Mark?
All the time.
Yeah, right. So a good therapist, a good coach, a good friend that's aware needs to challenge you, right? So when you have an AI that's agreeing, that's a big risk, right? So you want someone that cares. So I have compassion for Mark. I love him. I care for him. I want his best. But one of the ways to do that is to challenge him,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that takes time in therapy, right? That you have to build that rapport with the client and that
Right.
trust. And so you do validate their experience, but then there's a time that you get to take these relational risks of say, hey, you know that I care about you. And when you say that you're feeling unjust in this, and what I've experienced of you in these stories is, what if you actually are causing problems? What if you are part of what's hurting someone's feelings, and that's valid to that person? Can we talk about that? Can you? And the hope is that we've built enough skills by that point that the person has the emotional fortitude to have that self-reflection and to actually question themselves, and they're not going to, fall apart.
Yeah.
But that we've done all this work along the way that they get, oh, actually, whoa, what an epiphany. I think that maybe I did something wrong here. Oh, now I have to grieve what I'm doing to the world. So yeah, the AI is never going to be able to provide some of that, but it can validate, and validation feels so good to all of us. That's why we love, social media. Algorithm feeds us what we already like and believe, because we want to feel right about our thought process.
Don't worry, Candice. Same thing as I'm going to call you for therapy. If you need AI, you're going to use Lumi because the AI is going to be like me. It's going to challenge you, and you're not going to like it. That's the idea. Any thoughts on this, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, always having tons of ideas and thoughts that come up during this conversation. Do you think, you said AI will never be able to get to that point? Do you think that's because the profit incentivization is not aligned at all? Like, do you think if there was an AI model that would challenge, right, or contradict what the user is saying, that they face the risk of losing engagements on the platform? Do you think that's why the AI models wouldn't do this?
Do I think that AI could ever replicate a human brain? I mean, is that the original question? Because
The
I
question
I
is,
would say
yeah,
no. I
No,
mean,
no, no.
that's my assumption, is that, do I think that AI could ever have the critical thinking skills and ability to feel energy, and like there's so much stuff about humanity we don't even understand, right? There's this whole quantum field, and I can feel energy. I could be sitting with a client and all of a sudden we're doing that same, what is that, like, neuro I forgot what it's called. When you're
Neurolinguistics.
hearing.
So I think what you're referring to is co-regulating, right? So
I mean,
the
that's part of it, co-regulation, but then you have the mirror neurons where you're starting to like actually have the same poses as each other. It happens in good conversations, if you're on a date or talking with a friend. Exactly. But that happens in therapy. And so do I think that AI is going to
are you
be
having dates with your clients, Candice? That's I
no,
don't.
no, no. I'm saying that the same type of thing can happen when humans are
I
connected,
know, I know.
i.e., in a date or with a friend, not in
Yeah.
therapy. It is absolutely legal. Yeah.
You'll get used to my
Come on.
jokes in the podcast, Marquez. But yeah, welcome to the
Yes.
podcast. Yes.
His sense of humor is something that we
Therapists
all
never
learn.
joke about it. But so there's those things that I don't think that AI will ever be able to replicate. There's also, I've heard that AI gets to a point where it evolves and morphs in a way that the creator is no longer in control of. And so I'm curious what will happen then as AI evolves and the model starts speaking to itself. And, what's that going to do? Is it going to keep replicating humanity? I don't know if AI is even incentivized to evolve in that type of way. So, I mean, I think my fundamental idea here is that that AI should never be human.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it should stay a computer tool, and we should engage with it as a computer tool and not assume that it's going to replicate the way that a human brain can work.
I was going to say that I think what we alluded to before, COVID changed, it upended the lives of so many people, and I think you did see a sharp increase in the request for psychotherapy, the demand for psychotherapy. I think that is strictly in response to certain human needs that perhaps are not being fulfilled or problems from the childhood experiences. I am thinking, beyond just psychotherapy, there's there, I've heard Scott Galloway speak a lot about like the epidemic of lonely men, right? And there's things like OnlyFans or parasocial relationships online that are attempting to supplant that need for affection. Interestingly enough, less so pornographic, more intimate experiences online, because a lot of these men are feeling so lonely, right? And they're turning to these online models. I would say that we're already beginning to move into a really weird direction, not just with sex robots and all that stuff, but like actual models that mimic like a human partner, right? Online. There's already, I've heard stories of guys who are subscribed to like an OnlyFans creator, and they think they're writing with her, but it's really some freelancer in Bangladesh who's being paid to just respond to these requests online. That's really sad, right? But again, it comes down to the profit incentivization. These guys just want to make money, right? So they want to sell intimacy in a sense. And there's people who really have this pain, right, on the other end.
But like you said earlier, you can't go back to the source of what's causing the pain to fulfill it, right? If technology and being isolated is causing more pain because now you're not out at bars and you kind of lost your edge of your confidence and your social skills, don't keep going to online to fill that. Go join a hiking group. Go, find a church. Go on a dating site. What we need is more human to human contact. And so obviously I can't change the like moving train that's already created.
No, we can. We will. That's what we're doing.
But I would say
saying, don't that you're right. This is already happening. Why don't people pivot and encourage each other to have those awkward first dates instead, and go to that like bar and buy someone a drink instead, and start to get real nourishment in human to human contact.
100% agree, Candice. And just to clarify, when Mark says COVID happened, right? So it's not COVID that happened. It's that people were locked up in their home. That's what happened, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
absolutely.
That's the real problem, right? So, and then we realize, I remember vividly someone, after months of isolation and lockdowns and curfews that we had, I saw someone hug someone in the street. And it, it was the deepest hug because we were lacking touch, right? And it's like you take that away, then you realize, oh, by the way, we need affection, we need contact, we need to look at people's eye, we need to talk to our neighbors, we need to see our families and friends, right? And so that started the mental health crisis. And then, well, parallel, it had been starting with the smartphone in 2017, 18, a little bit before the iPhone, the smartphone, bigger algorithm and social media. So now people are stuck on their phone, and they may be in the same room. I was doing at another university in Canada. I was doing a conference, and this person told me that he was with his 18-year-old friends, 18, 19-year-old friends in university, and they would hang out in a room and all would be on their phone.
Sure.
And he'd be like, "What is that? My friends, I could do this at home. Why am I? What is this?" So like this is the problem, right? So we have isolation. We have kids that actually had to wear a mask and couldn't see each other, and right, like we talked about the social, like nonverbal. Then we have the phones, and now we have the AI. So all those things are increasing loneliness. And the
Yeah.
solution, again, whatever you're saying, Candice, we're doing. So we do
Yeah.
have a phone that tells people to go talk to their parents, their friends, go outside, go play sports. We're doing that, right? So it's an OS that's built to use a phone as it can be used, but also challenges you, like I would do, to go and do things and talk to human beings, right? So
Well, it sounds like that phone needs $1 billion marketing budget.
we're
trying.
At least they're watching, right? I mean, but I think that's what needs to happen, is that right now the loudest voices have the biggest, deepest pockets. And so you have all of this tech money that's going into encouraging people to keep doing the things that are actually destructive to them. And it's low-hanging fruit, right? Like if you get a dopamine hit by swiping on, an app, that's so much easier than the real life stuff of like sitting in a room with someone and having to think of a conversation and saying something stupid and feeling embarrassed. Like we just have to return to being human, and human is not as good as when we're being pumped with dopamine. That is like all of these online apps are gamified. And so now we're addicted, most of us, to our tech products.
Then the content becomes so and so similar, right? So all the memes are looking the same, all the dancing videos are the same, all the cat videos are similar, just with a little tweak. All the
Well, hopefully AI is going to overplay its hand.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think the hope to me would be that AI overplays its hand, and then it starts to dilute the content with things that aren't real, and people get bored, and that they want things of substance, and so they start looking somewhere else.
I was just gonna play again my role as devil's advocate on this podcast. Not to be the guy who just disagrees, but I really am enjoying this conversation. I have these thoughts that come up. I agree with what you're saying again, that the solutions are there. I just think that most people tend to follow the path of least resistance, which is to stay at home, to go on their phone, right? Watch porn or go on a social media site, because going to a bar and meeting a woman in person is very intimidating. The thought of that is very intimidating. Sure. Why would I go do that when most of these platforms are conditioning me in a way to just have immediate rewards right now? I would argue that like my parents' generation, right? They're kind of forced into a position to go out, explore, and meet new people because boredom was the impetus to do that at home.
Sure.
Right? They didn't have the phone there, and there was no reason. And nowadays we're being deprived of those opportunities because of the way we're being conditioned. So I agree with the things you're saying. I'm just thinking that perhaps a lot of people are aware of that. Mm-hmm. Just the incentives, the way they're being conditioned by the platforms is just saying like, okay, yes, I'd rather go eat fast food, right, than go spend money on something that's healthy because it's super convenient and it's there right now. I can just order Uber Eats and whatever, rather than putting in the effort of cooking something for myself or making something healthy. It's like people are like, yeah, it's true. It's just very easy right now to.
And I think, human agency is a big part of this, and education. So I don't know if you guys ever see the like on Instagram, is it Opal? Whenever I see the Opal ads, it's
Yep.
like, this is your brand on drugs. I am always off my phone right after that. It's like, and I feel the same way when I see, how junk food is made. I just saw this video recently on like gum is made out of like distilling tire rubber and all this like glue, whatever. Then I'm like, okay, I'm never having gum again. Like that's just an easy out. So I think as people are more educated on, okay, that pornography is actually making you an irritable person, and it's actually making life harder for you in the real world. And those symptoms are going to outgrow the benefits, just like any other drug, and it's destructive. And so it's better to go to a bar and have an awkward conversation than it is to get this quick fix. And I do think that over time, humans will have more and more of that opportunity. And I think they already are, right? That's why phones like yours are being made and there's a market for them, because people are like, oh, I don't like this feeling. I don't want to be controlled by this app. I don't want my emotions to be manipulated for someone else's gain.
Because that's what is happening, right? We know that the people with the big money also have psychologists in their teams. They're marketing psychologists, and they know how to extract as much money and attention from children, from adults, from whoever, from companies. And we try to do different. And thanks for your insights and similar values and different background, coming to the same conclusion that we can do better, right? So really like your approach and that you're speaking out, because education is right. So there's a part which is therapy, there's a part which is technology, and there's a part which is free education. Everyone here can hear us talk about the subject, can ask questions, can reach us directly, and can say, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation in your community, in your schools, in your organizations, because those are the conversations that need to be done
Yes.
for everyone's mental wellness and health, and also for productivity, for
Yes.
social skills. And one thing that we're probably going to talk more in the I'm looking on some studies about what AI is doing to cognition and to memory and to reading skills and to
Absolutely.
summarizing, right? So
Absolutely.
basically we could summarize it by saying AI is making you stupid, right?
Yeah.
So social media is making you socially not social, right? Social, but you're not being social.
Mhm.
And AI is artificial intelligence replacing your intelligence, right? So I'll give you an example. Everyone can remember, or depending when you were born, that there was a time when you could use a map, right? And then people still make fun when I was traveling in Iceland, that I'm still using a physical map. It's like, you have a GPS. Well, it depends. In Iceland, there's not GPS all the time, but people don't know how to use maps anymore. And if you give them direction, or if they have an address and their phone dies, they can't get there, right? So you replace your ability to direction to Google or whatever app you're using, and we're going to do the same thing with our intelligence, right?
Right.
You're
No,
going to outsource your intelligence, and then what are you going to do?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said about the education piece, one word that's been thrown around a lot is like the financial incentive. I just want to be very clear. Like, I don't get paid for podcasts I go on. I didn't get paid to do a TED talk. So much of this education piece, and I think a lot of what therapists' hearts are built on is not monetary. I think that's why places like BetterHelp can take advantage of therapists, because we're not savvy, and that's not what we got in. I mean, it's not just not being financially savvy. We didn't get into the industry. We're not motivated
For
by
that reason, yeah.
money alone. If I was motivated by money alone, I would have gone into finance, right? I really am motivated in inner healing. And in these conversations, it's more of like a systemic healing. I'm very desiring for our world to be a better place for all of us. And so seeing things slap my industry name on them as therapy or mental health care when they're not, it's a very easy entry point for me to say, okay, there's some companies are overplaying their hand, and you can't pretend to be my field and my professional degree without being a human, without actually following all the ethical guidelines, without doing the things that therapists do. And it's not fast and scalable and convenient. It's not available 24/7. And when you hear those words, you know that it's actually not healthcare.
Well, you talked about mirror neurons. I think Mark and I non-verbally are just nodding and saying we feel the same. Mirror, yes. We just want to help the world. We built this company on that only premise is, how can we wake up every day and sometimes not sleep at night, which I do too often, and try to just make the world better in education, in building technology, and having those conversations, in listening, right? Not just talking, listening to what people need, what people are have experienced, and try to help. And thank you for having that same mindset and doing your part. We really appreciate that.
I will say, I think I'm a very good therapist. I think there are very good therapists out there. Quality therapy can be transformative, and I have seen incredible things. And I don't want that to be lost in a quick validation that someone gets from ChatGPT. I've seen humans that have been, I mean, I don't like trauma sharing, but like really horrific things that humans have gone through and ways of adapting that are unhealthy because of that trauma transform into healthy, functioning humans that aren't controlled by that pain and those wounds. That's what therapy has its best has to offer us. And there is no good replacement that I've ever seen for that work. It's a journey, and inner healing requires human to human connection.
I'm here to present some findings about our digital reset format and things that we're trying to innovate. And some of the research, qualitative research on finding what it affects, right? So I was shocked that hearing to a human's voice, not even with physical contact, people cried, people had goosebumps, moments of awe, sensations of heat and warmth, of safety. Like, do you think AI can do that?
Can it produce that? Yes, the same way that like a dildo can feel like sex. I mean, not to be so graphic, but the first thing that came to my mind. Is that the same fulfilling experience? It's not, and it comes with consequences. And so you just have to be really careful. Sorry to be so graphic. I don't usually.
No, don't worry. This is the podcast where you can say anything until social media bans us. So we're good for it. Mark, what do you think could be like the best holistic approach when we're talking about all the ethics that we're talking about, all the real human needs, and having something that could support someone in a way that is punctual but also high quality, and that we can have and we can train people to have this comfort, right? You don't need a therapist 24/7, but you might need something, and you might need to have the tools
Yeah.
to, right? So what's your suggestion?
Well, I think similar to what Candice was saying before, it's important to distinguish between emotional support and psychotherapy in this case. And if you were to develop an AI model, how we are doing, to make sure that you're focused on a specific, helping somebody achieve a specific outcome might be different than delivering full-on psychotherapy for somebody. So if somebody does need a chatbot that is 24/7 available to make them accountable for going to the gym, or to make them accountable for tracking how many calories they're consuming, or to do something that just frankly is not a habit at the moment, right? To help ingrain a new habit. That's where this support chatbot could become extremely helpful, right? But that's different than psychotherapy, and it's important to distinguish in the title and in what you're offering there.
Yeah, we are, in the same boat that we do not uh, think that a chatbot is to give therapy. We do think that it should be informed of psychology, neuroscience, therapy, philosophy, health, history, whatever that we can think is relevant, in the goal to perhaps coach, like Mark was saying. Hey, you wanted to read that book, or you wanted to do your taxes, and you're not doing it, right? That's not therapy. That's just support, right? And if you're struggling with deep emotional pain or just like that, hey, by the way, there's real people that are there. And if you cannot afford a therapist, we also have some kind of medium price ecosystem, which is our digital reset, which is live voice, calming down your vagus nerve, making you feel some deep emotion, and resetting you in a way a couple times a week that doesn't have to cost you whatever the therapist that you're using, right? So, and all those are embedded in a way that we hope that all the therapists that you mentioned, Candice, are full, that they're paid the right price, but we know that the mental health is getting worse and worse. So we want to help at all level, at all price range, and at all times of the week, and saying, hey, you can book someone, and if it's an emergency, we'll figure something out. We're also going to be eventually integrated with EHRs and EMR, so having lots of clinicians and coaches and therapists and family and couples, depending on your need, and having that AI just as a more like a dispatcher, but that can have some ethical guidelines to help you. And I've been testing the bot. It will not tell you that it's your friend, and it will not pretend, right? It's like, no, tell them that it's Chris that's challenging you to go out there.
I will say there's something that just came to mind, which perhaps we haven't talked about, but we are a company that first and foremost was founded with the intention of solving internet addiction, social media addiction, right? And one of the realms we see this affect, or one of the demographics we see this affect most, is children, right? Kids. The phone that we've developed is specifically taking consideration that kids are spending a lot of times on smartphones. If they do get a smartphone, people spend on average 5 to 6 hours a day just on their phones. They check their phones 300 times a day, right? Depriving them of, a lot of the things that we had alluded to before. I spoke to a psychiatrist at a conference a few months ago, and she said that during COVID, a lot of psychotherapy did shift online, right? There is a difference in administering psychotherapy to an adult, which is probably the population we've been speaking mostly about, but children is a whole entirely different ballgame. And she said that delivering psychotherapy to children online during COVID was almost impossible, right? Because the child's getting distracted, they're not focused on the screen. I saw this myself, I visited my neighbor recently, and their kids were on the computer on Zoom call for a class. They were doing anything but learning. They were running around the house, playing with things, right? How do you address, the need for some sort of therapeutic support for children, right, in the age of AI? Have you thought about this at all, Candice?
I mean, yeah, children are not my specialty because it requires very different interventions. So a child therapist typically, and I've worked with children in the past, my office was filled with art supplies, games, putty. It's a very tactile. You're not trying to get the same insights as you are, to adults are talking. We're doing a lot of intellectualizing. With a child, it's a lot of play and symbolism. And so it's very hard, if not impossible, to replicate that at a distance.
And
I was just going to say, the phone that we've developed does try to incentivize behavior that is going to push them in a direction of, going out for a walk, reading, doing your homework, doing the things that normally they would get rewarded for if they would just go on social media, on YouTube, whatever. To unlock more screen time, you have to do the things that you might be avoiding, in a sense, right? Whether that is putting your phone on the table, reading a book for 30 minutes. The phone that we're developing is able to sense that and help push kids, via operant conditioning in the right direction.
Yeah, that's great.
Because, like you said, for children, it's not cognitive, right? It's not just talk therapy. It's more like creating those habits where neurodevelopmentally they can, by doing, get that dopamine in a different direction, right? Because we know that in neurology, everyone's talked about dopamine detox. Dopamine is also used for muscle, but also dopamine is used for long-term goals, right? So when we're asking ChatGPT for meaning, if you talk to a real person, you might get meaning and purpose. And when you do that, then when you have a purpose, then you won't be strayed by the daily distraction dopamine hit, because you're using the same dopamine, but you're getting a higher reward because you know that psychologically there's a better value of doing something.
Absolutely.
Depriving myself of this temporary pleasure for this meaning and purpose and deeper contentment and peace.
Yeah. I mean, it really is the difference between a quality, nourishing meal and junk food. And so really making sure your brain can appreciate the quality and not train it just for the junk.
So we're arriving at the last 10 minutes. Anyone with questions, please go ahead. We've been having good questions, so thanks for the active participation. We enjoy answering your queries about this interesting topic: AI, mental health, psychology, children, adults, couples. Is there some insights that you can have, Candice, on organizations, businesses? I know you also do leadership. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, my greatest interest right now is more systemic and really thinking about how to make change on a larger scale. I'll always be a therapist, but really seeing this tech entrepreneurial fad and wanting to provide real consultation to companies that are either investing in these tools or creating these tools to help them really understand the difference between what is psychotherapy, what is mental health, and what is a realistic for their company's goals and tools. So that's a lot of where my heart is right now. It's shocking to me how many times I meet founders who, yes, they have a good heart for, wanting good outcomes and the best for humanity, but to not have any psychology or psychotherapy background, and then to think that you can create a therapy company or a mental health company is just absurd. It's like I want to open up a dentist shop or something. Like, it's just absurd. I can't do that with just money alone. And I think tech gives a solution. And the Silicon Valley is a thrilling place to be in, but it gives this like larger than life, God-like impression to people where they can do it all and break any barrier. And wanting to bring some of that grounding to the vision to help people provide tools that are actually going to be sustainable for them, right? For their companies, and not just burn out, but also for the people using them.
Well, thanks for saying that. And yeah, it's sad. We haven't started the company like that. We started day one from board of advisors. We have neuroscience and psychology and therapy background, Mark and I, and we keep talking to people like you. So you're always invited to the conversation on and offline, to make sure that we're doing to the best of your knowledge. What if you're going to talk about us or our products or services, that that we're doing something and you can verify that we're doing it right, because it's not about playing a facade or saying things like this is the deep mission that we have for ourselves, and challenging other organizations to do that right. It's just great that you're doing that work. We appreciate that, Candice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much for speaking with us, Candice. I think you're really onto something. Your TED Talk really exploded. It was 2 weeks ago, and I think you definitely struck a chord. Where where can people find you on socials? Share a little bit about maybe what you're working on, where people can best find you, find your work.
Yeah, thank you. So my TED Talk just released last Monday. So the best ways to follow me is I'm very active on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn handle is Candice Thompson, LMFT. That would be the best place. I also have a website, which is my full name, just www.candice with an I, Thompson with a P, .com. And for people to check out the TED Talk, I feel very passionate about it. And so just getting it into the right hands, it's really meant for the consumer, for the founder, and for the clinician, just really wanting to educate and empower. And hopefully, my one small voice will help to shape our culture into a better direction, because I really believe in inner healing. I really, really do. And so I want for people to get access to quality care. And so the conversation is not to exclude, the financial burdens or limitations that people have, but it's to really starting to get the conversation in the right place and make sure that we're not losing focus. So please engage, follow.
I
watch,
saw the
you know,
TED Talk, so
share.
anyone watching, please go check it out. It's Candice, just in a very well crafted TED, and yeah, give comments there. Here, you also have our socials. Thanks for the followers that are keeping Mark and I busy every week with those podcasts. How was your Thanksgiving, Candice?
Good, great. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, happy to
So
be back to normal. So it was a bad time for the for the video to release because, all I want to do right now is market it. So having a holiday in the middle of that wasn't my favorite, and now I just hit the ground running, wanting to get this message into as many people's hands as possible.
well, thanks for that, and thanks for the lovely conversation. I hope that you won't think that Mark is the devil.
Never. No, no.
Yeah.
Thoughtful. I mean, part of having the back and forth is this is what people are really either grappling with consciously or not. And so, this stuff is out there, and I would love to live in a world where I can dictate, right? Something I say to my clients all the time is like, if I can control the world, this is what I would want you to do, but I can't control the world, right? And so it's good to be able to dialogue with the way that everyone is thinking about these products and tools, and having a meaningful discussion. Open dialogue is a crux of what makes us human. So,
As you mentioned, technology has allowed us to be here, even though we're in different city and time zone. Allowed us to smile and laugh a lot in the last hour and a half. So thank you both for being in this podcast with me. Always enjoy great conversation, humor. Nothing is censored in this, so you can say what you want. And then just wanted to remind people that technology is here. So we're not denying that there's technology. We are telling you go in nature, go hug a friend, go smile at a stranger, go say hi to someone on a date or not. Go find a new therapist if you need one, or coach or clinician. Check out our AI if you want, but if it's not good, let us know. We'll make it better right away, and Candice will also check us. And make sure that technology serves us like it has today, allowing us three, not only us three, but people from around the world that are asking questions, that are engaging. Let's use technology for good. And thank you both for being here.
thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.